In 1974, the world was collapsing, and New Zealand seemed like the place to go to. It seemed like nirvana, so that's where I went for 3 months. But winter in Wellington is not to be recommended. But one of the joys of my visit was staying in Pukerua Bay with Davina Whitehouse, who was one of New Zealand's favourite actresses. She was a friend of my friend, Jonquil Antony, and Jonquil put me in touch with Davina, and what a delight she was. She'd been an actress in Britain during the 30s under the name of Davina Craig. She'd starred with people like Ivan Novello, and then she married an Englishman who then went to New Zealand, and she became quite a famous character actress, and she even went to Australia in the 80s and appeared on Prisoner Cell Block H. So here is Davina talking to me, but also she's talking to Jonquil, because they used to send each other audio tapes, letters, because Jonquil's sight was failing and she couldn't write letters anymore and she couldn't read letters. So they would talk to each other across the waters through audio tapes. So what you're going to hear is a mixture of Davina talking about herself, Davina talking to Jonquil, and Davina talking to me. You'll love her speaking voice. It's one of the great glories of New Zealand, and I hope you enjoy our conversations.
The worst time, the very first blitzes on London, and it was very horrible. We used to sit down there, and the building used to shake like a jelly. We shook like a jelly. And I used to be going out to Wellington suburb to be making a film called The Farmer's Wife, with Patricia Rock in it and Michael Wilde in it and all sorts of beautiful people like that. And the trains wouldn't run, and in the mornings there were unexploded, well, I know, but they were horribly not running because of unexploded bombs, and the roads were filled with all those long pipes which ran water to burning buildings. And one morning Jonquil sat up in bed as I was going out and said, "I am leaving London." And I said, "I am going to leave London." I went and slept in my dressing room at Wellington suburb, and Jonquil packed up and went to live in a council house near to her sister-in-law's house in somewhere where she lived. Her brother was married at that time to Arthur Ransom's daughter. It was near Arthur Ransom's house. And she went there.
This is Philip.
Philip. And I think Philip still keeps that flat on as a sort of pied-à-terre for himself, because it's a marvellous flat in the heart of Bloomsbury.
Philip's a serious one, isn't he?
Hasn't the other one died? Joss? Yes. He was the sort of... no, I don't think Philip's the serious one. I think the other one was the serious one. Oh, isn't this boring? Oh, God.
This is getting interesting. There's some dimensions of interest.
I think we put this off a minute and I'll pour us another gin.
I just realised these trousers which I bought they're far too big for me. I think because I tried more with my long johns. See?
I think it was at that health farm we went to yesterday, and you went on that machine and you reduced yourself.
Yes, maybe yes. But I think I was only doing my ribs, of which there were a great number.
And they rattled.
Very prominent. Very prominent indeed.
Now let's turn this off, and I'll ring up my neighbour and see if they're there.
Well, actually, all the men in the saunas were their husbands anyway.
And one of them was wearing a fur hat.
Yes, on top of a whipped-up toupee, which must have sort of steamed off while he was in there. Must have been rather uncomfortable for him.
Anyway, Keith has washed his long johns and hung them on to dry on my line, and
this caused great excitement, of course, among the neighbourhood.
I have to explain, it's a very, very young friend who was visiting me, and we went to a party last night in a very nice house where they'd taken all the walls down and just left the chimney, and that was all nice, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we both find it very, very much more difficult to do tapes than you, because I don't think I have your wonderful stream of consciousness that you can go rattling on and rattling on. You always say, you sound as if you're addressing me. I can't do anything but address you. And I can't think of anything at once in my voice that you want to hear about. Except that, yes, I expect you do really want to hear. You want to hear how I'm getting on. Well, I am getting on extremely well, really, now. I've sort of adjusted and coped after 30-odd years marriage. You know, you take a little time to sort of get used to being on your own. But I was getting on my own used so very well that I thought, well, perhaps I was becoming a sort of old maid widow. So I answered an advertisement of somebody who wanted to have a room, and I have a young teacher living here too, which is quite a good thing. You know, gets me used to people putting the spoons in the wrong drawer and things without my minding, and that's been very pleasant and will sort of tide me over this year, and that's been a good thing. And she's wonderful with Gilly, my dog. She takes her for long, long walks, and that's very good. Well, she's taken her to church. Yes, she always takes Gilly to church. It'll be very good for Gilly.
I see why you can end up going to church after her influence has finally permeated.
Oh, well, I had a very horrible weekend too. You'll understand this. Last weekend, a friend had gone to England, and they'd left their very, very old dachshund behind, and they asked me to sort of keep an eye on it. And I had it for the weekend, and it was in a terrible state. It looked as though it had just come out of Belsen, and it was all bones, and they shut it up all day because they'd have to go to work, and its paws were bleeding where it had tried to cut its way out. And it was very incontinent, and I couldn't keep it because I have to be out all day. So I felt the kindest and awful best thing was to have him put to sleep, and it was a very nasty experience, and I had to write a long letter. And you know, that's another nasty experience for me. So I had 2 nasty experiences in 1 week.
One very enjoyable thing, Jonquil, on Friday night was looking through Davina's press cuttings book and discovering that she worked with all these people like Ida Lupino and Will Hay.
I didn't push it. He asked to see them, I would have you know. And it was a nice change for me because nobody has ever heard of these people. See, I met a lady last night whose name was Vesta, and I said, Aunt Vesta Tilly. And they didn't they didn't know what I was talking about.
No.
There was a Vesta and a Tilly there. Did you notice last night? Yes. That's strange.
We were talking about children's names yesterday, and I believe one child's called Turbin Tilly.
Torben and Brim. Torben and Brim.
And we also mentioned that in America 2 twins have been called syphilis and gonorrhea. We quite like syphilis. I think it's got definite possibilities.
And Keith wants to have an aunt emphysema, which is a nice one. Because of this small society, I don't know, you wrote to Jonquil, did you?
Yes.
Yeah. That he was staying with some friends that he picked up the daughter of somewhere in Samoa, New Guinea or somewhere, and they said, you must stay with my parents in Pukerua Bay, and found that they knew me, which was, of course, typical of New Zealand. Got through that gin very quickly. Was it a weak one? I poured 1 weak one for me and 1 strong one for you.
Oh, it didn't seem those to be strong, but anyway.
You must have got the weak one for me. I'll pour you now.
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh.
So, mumble, mutter, what should we talk about?
You can stop that thing when we're thinking, but it mightn't start again. I suppose you ought to ask how Pug William is. Would Jonquil be in touch with him?
Well, Pug William is dead. Pug William died about mid-72, but Noel now has another pug called Harriet, who is William's... Well, it's from the same family, anyway.
The only pug I've ever had was a Folly. Her name was Lolly, and it's one of the very few dogs I've ever had that was a Folly, because she was ravished by a whippet. And that is a terrible, terrible mistake to have a whippet pug cross. It's not a good mixture. And all our friends said, you'll never get rid of the puppies. And Archie sort of was very brave and thought, we'll keep 2 and I will destroy 2 at birth, which was a horrible and terrible experience for him. And he said it was so awful that he put them in a chocolate box and buried them in our friend's garden in the middle of the night, because he thought they were so mean to make us do this terrible thing. He would bury the dogs in their garden. So that was...
Their ghosts still paw the ground.
Are you sure that that little black needle shouldn't be wobbling over into green? I've always thought it should. I thought it should be...
But so we shout like that, you see. It goes into green, but there's not a very pleasant noise.
I'm awfully glad to hear that your eyes are better. I feel so much happier writing to you, those constant letters that I write to you, Jonquil, knowing that, you know, somebody else hasn't got to read all our silly things and the way we write, because people find it, I know, they must find it very, very strange to sort of have to read to you petty petkin and things. And they must want to know. And is your writing going on all right? I love hearing from you. I adore getting tapes from you. I love getting letters, anything you like to send me. Your typing now is superb. You don't get on the wrong line. And oddly enough, when you do get on the wrong line, I can read it. It's a very strange thing. And it does, I love getting your letters. Your also stream of consciousness letters are very, very good. I'm still working terribly hard. I leave home at 7:30 in the morning and come back, and I've been in a play, which was rather fun, a local play. It was a rather naughty play, but it was very nice. In fact, I think I gave your address to a very nice young playwright who'd written the play, who'll be coming over, I think, to London sometime, and he might look you up. Stephen's still in New York with the United Nations, and Quentin is back in New Zealand and has provided me with 2 grandchildren, which are very, very nice. The little girl is a year old today, and poor Keith is in a room with a deep freeze and a cot and a pram and a Raggedy Ann.
And I feel very much at home.
Right, you always have a deep freeze, a Raggedy Ann and a cot in your room. Well, tell Jonquil about some of your journeys. And
I think I told you most of them in my letter, didn't I, Jonquil, or referred to them. New Zealand, my opinions about New Zealand are forming now. I found it very difficult to have any decent opinions about New Zealand, maybe because so many New Zealanders were desperately trying to correct any forming opinions that came into my mind, because they felt sure that they were going to be detrimental to their country. I find them that most of the New Zealanders you talk to will always drag the conversation round to England, or rather London, not so much England, but London, whether you want them to talk about London or not. And I had my hair absolutely massacred by a New Zealand lady hairdresser the other day, and when she wasn't digging her scissors into the back of my neck or making rude remarks about my thinning hair, she was saying, how could I possibly have any criticisms about England, because it was all so beautiful, everything was marvellous. Now, what's wrong with England? Just you tell me what's wrong with it, she'd say to me, as I was desperately trying to read Penthouse. Well, the food's not good, people are rude, the train service is bad, the tube service is wonderful.
well, it is wonderful in a country where we have no tube service.
The rail service is fantastic. Rudeness? I never came across any rudeness, and I was there for a whole year, because you have to train for a whole year. Richard Thomas, and it was in the West End, and and
I can't understand you going to a lady hairdresser. Who put you on to her?
well, this was someone that I said, can you recommend a really good hairdresser? He said, oh yes, well I go to this person. It's called Knightsbridge, and I suppose should have put me off.
Yes, that should have warned you. Yes,
but anyway,
yes.
as it was a personal recommendation, I went along. And when I first went to make the appointment, she said, oh, you're an actor, aren't you? And I said, no, it wasn't, so she was a bit disappointed about that. But anyway, she said, well, come in 3:30 tomorrow and we'll have a talk about your hair. So that reassured me a bit.
Yes,
I
it
thought
must
that
have been awfully expensive.
No, it was about $2.50, but it was such a bad... I mean, she didn't
Yeah.
even wash the hair. I mean, you should never cut hair dry. I mean, she just, it was a disaster from start to finish.
Yes, I don't know where you went to. It doesn't sound like any other place where my friends go. There was like blow waves and things.
No, this was very blow wavy. And then the people I stayed with were also trying to dissuade me from thinking ill of New Zealand in any form at all.
I
mean,
haven't
because of
tried
it-
to form you at
No,
all,
no,
have
no,
I?
but you're not New Zealander, are you?
I am now, yes.
Oh, I don't think you
Yes,
are.
I am. I know, well, they don't think I am, but I think I am. So I've lived here longer than the majority of New Zealanders, you realise that.
Yes.
22 years now. But, no, I mean, Archie would always sell New Zealand so hard that you wanted to pack up and go home at once because he oversold, and you can oversell, I think.
Mm.
No, I think the only thing that I have ever said to you was, it is marvellous to live within reach of the capital city where you can do a job that you like and be living on a beach like this and be a poor person and have the sea come rolling in. You've heard about our high tides. Well, high tides in England. I am threatened. I'm a threatened woman, Jonquil, because there's supposed to be high tides on the 17th of July, the highest tides in the world, because the moon has never been so close to the world before. And as you know, I haven't got much leeway between me and the sea, and it may pour in on the 17th of July. So this might be my signing off remarks.
Bit of Poseidon adventure all over again. New Zealand swamped. Moon drops into New Zealand.
Well, Archie always had great arrangements in case there was a tidal wave here. He always used to say, you must take the cars and any valuables and drive up the hill, Davina, and I will take the hills with the dogs. But of course his getaway was much quicker than mine, don't you think?
How about the children? They were all gone.
Oh, they were gone. They were gone by then.
The children could look after
Yeah.
themselves.
Did you know that Stephen was married? Stephen has married a woman's lib lady. Somehow or other, we got through this very desultory tape on one side, Keith and and I don't know if you'll find it interesting. I hope you will. We seemed to jubble on. We were quite determined, actually, to destroy it after we'd finished it, the first side. But I've listened back to it in the quiet of the evening, and I don't suppose I can do any better. So I'll send it to you because I find it, as you know, very, very difficult. You say, oh, just let it all pour out, but I can't. Hope I won't keep on moaning about this. I'll just try and think of a few more things to tell you. Keith has now gone back to Wellington. He's going to the South Island to continue his journeys around the world. Very nice. We got on with very well. And very nice of you to send him to me. We enjoyed each other very much. We went to a thing called, we thought it was a health farm. I got him some work with the listener, our listener here, and he's done some book reviews. He did Rose Kennedy's book, Her Life, and Lord Longford's life, which has been a little bit of money for him. And they also thought it would be very nice for him to go and visit this strange place that's been put up here called Tudor Heights. And we thought it was a health farm, but when we went there, as far as I can see, it must have been well, I have no idea what it was. It was the strangest place. They had sort of Renaissance beds and suites, and they had little turrets with curly-whirly staircases going up with deep, shaggy pile carpets, and there were sauna bars, and there were ladies trotting about and gentlemen trotting about, all with nothing on, and nobody seemed to mind. And there wasn't very much health in evidence because there was an awful lot of drinkings, and they kept on talking about the delicious foods they were going to have. We found it all very mysterious, and Keith can't really think how he can work it into any sort of article. We were mystified, but we enjoyed it. It was quite an enjoyable afternoon. And today has been one of those very lovely, sort of bright sunny days with the sea. And after we'd finished the first half of this tape to you, we walked along and talked to some rather nice young people who got one of the batches a little further along. She's Australian. She's doing her PhD in medieval German or something. And he's a postman. And They seem to be living together very happily. We had a very nice, happy time sitting in the sun. And then Keith came back and had lunch, and he went on delving through all my press cuttings and things. He became absolutely fascinated. I think he thinks I'm a sort of rather delicious antique, not a really good and genuine antique, but a junky Victorian antique. And kept on saying, "Oh, how fantastic! Did you know her? And was she in the..." It's all rather nice, really, because a bit of a change for me to find people who knew about my past. And then I took him up to the train. He's going off to a dance at the university or something, and then he's going to the South Island. And I'm sitting here by the driftwood fire. I can hear it crackling and puffling in the background. And I shall be going off to bed. And I've just finished producing a play for radio at work. Christopher Hampton's new version of The Doll's House. It's only a very slightly new version in that he's taken out some of the very period, difficult bits to do, and streamlined it just a little bit. It's rather a long play for radio, I think, but it was being done as a special thing for a Playhouse series which is selected for the university year. It must be one of the plays that they're studying at university. And we've been doing a whole series of them called Women in a Man's World. We did Taming of the Shrew, The Doll's House. I'm going to do Yerma by Lorca, which I'm rather dreading doing because it's all about the sterile woman, and it's all in verse, and it's rather heavy, I think. But I always find one thinks, so one may not enjoy doing these things, and then by the time you've got involved and found the music, and I'm having some songs composed by a very nice young New Zealand composer who looks like a Red Indian with a long plait of black hair over his shoulder, and he's going to do these sort of Spanish songs they're going to sing. I expect I shall become very fond of Yerma. I don't know if you know it. And then next week I'm producing a play by D.G. Bridson called Aaron's Fallout Shelter. So all in all, I do keep pretty busy, and it is a very interesting life, and I do have a lot of fun. I enjoy it very much. And I just wish I hadn't got to be forcibly retired about 3 years' time. Then I shall have to become a freelancer again, I suppose. Because Darling O'Large, she didn't leave any money, and I suppose I have the old age pension, and so I still have to find some other way of working. But I think this is a very good thing, really. I think one is apt to get into a rut, and I think it'll be very good to sort of start a new career when one's 65. You always forget how old we are, but it's coming up for 65, dear. Coming up for 65. Did I tell you that I bought a funny little house up in Auckland? Archie had gone terribly off the sea before he died. He felt he couldn't bear looking at the sea anymore, and what he wanted were trees, trees, trees. So I took all my savings and I bought a tiny little cottage on half an acre of bush. It's the most beautiful trees. It's got a standing grove of kauri trees, which are very big and super. It's a very tiny little cottage, and I don't know now if I will ever live in it myself, but of course one can let it, and that makes income, and that's a very good thing. It's up very close to Quentin, and he's very helpful and kind, and sort of copes with it for me. And what else? Stop a moment and think. Did I ever write and tell you about the business of the peacock feather fans that Betty Davis left with me? When she was here, she left some peacock feather fan as a little memento. She picked it up on her way through India, and it was lovely colouring, and I stuck it on my mantelpiece. And one day some long time afterwards, after Archie had died, some friends came down, and one of them was going to be in As You Like It, playing Monsieur Lebeau with his mouth full of news in As You Like It, and he said, oh, I'd love to have that fan and just go with my costume, could I have it to carry on? And I said, of course, and he took it up to town, and within 2 days he was in the psychiatric ward. The leading lady of the play had been knocked over and had arm broken, and his great friend had also broken an arm falling off something. It's just a series of the most incredible disasters, and they returned the fan to me, and this young actor came out of the hospital and went over to England with his friend, and in England he went and committed suicide, which was terribly sad, and I really went right off Betty Davis's fans and gave it to somebody to be destroyed, because she left the replica of a fan with some friends in Auckland, and I discovered it on their mantelpiece, and I went to commiserate with them when their little boy had died of a tumour of the brain. So I really feel they were fans of ill omen. People say that peacock feathers are unlucky, and I really began to believe it. I felt the most horrible feeling about this peacock feather fans. So that was rather a morbid story. And what else have I got interest to regale you with? A few months ago I started to sort of branch out in a new sort of line. I kept on being asked to go and give talks. You will wonder why. Yes, I'm sure you'll wonder why when you listen to all this burble that I do to you. But became a sort of great success as a sort of after-dinner speaker. Ran quite a little sort of sub-career, rushing around the country to Rotary clubs and things, talking about anything that sort of came into my mind. This was a sort of quite a new branch, and I really became quite in demand. What with Save the Children, and Lions clubs, and all sorts of things. And I enjoyed doing it very much because I had to fly around the country. Because I rather missed not doing any more television, because after my great win on the Feltex Award and everything, the television people felt, that I'd had my bash on television. Instead of building one up as they might overseas, they think, oh, that's that, we can't use it again. And so they haven't. Not that I particularly want to, because I don't think they've got any producers that I could trust. The very nice young producer who produced the play I won the Feltex Award in has gone over to Australia. Stephen is busily trying to get back into films, and he's doing quite a lot of writing in New York. And I like him being in New York with the United Nations, because they do come back every 2 years, but I don't think they'll stay. I like both my daughters-in-law, very lucky. They're adorable daughters-in-law. One is very Yorkshire, Quentin's one is a Yorkshire, but perfectly sweet. And she's busily learning Māori, because she wants to have a career as soon as the children are old enough, teaching Māori in the school. She's a very good linguist, and she thinks it would be a very good thing to become a teacher of Māori language in schools. And so she's busily preparing herself for her emancipation, but she's not really an emancipated woman. She's a nice, cosy daughter-in-law. The other one is also absolutely adorable, but she is very, very firm on women's rights, and she's taken on the whole of the United Nations single-handed. And actually she's been rather good for me, because one sort of is apt, after you've had a man for 30 years trotting around, to sort of wring one's hands and think, I have all sorts of complicated things I have to do, like pumping up the lavatory tank water and things, which one was apt to sort of think, oh, I can't do that, and find you can do it perfectly well. It's absolutely pottily easy. And I've learned to jack up the car and change those awful little wires when electricity goes fat, and do things like that, or mow the lawns with a motor mower. So I'm getting quite liberated. Do you remember Mary Ivan Smith? Oh, of course you remember them. They nearly came over to see me this April. It was all jacked up, got the house clean, all ready, great excitement. And then they were routed back to England by Indonesia or somewhere, so I didn't see them. I can't see myself coming over to England within the foreseeable future. Daddy is still alive and flourishing, fairly flourishing, but there isn't anything really I can do for him or to him or really with him. And it's a terribly expensive thing to do, and I wouldn't have a base in England. So I just don't think I shall be coming over for a while. Anyway, I certainly wouldn't be coming within the next 3 years while I'm still working, because I wouldn't want to take all that time off without pay. And who knows after that what will happen. Yes, I might come after then. I don't know. We should come out here again. Do wish you would. Oh, Giddy, stop scratching. Tell me what else to say. Helen, that's my young teacher lady, and I, in the evening, often sit and she's a great spinner. It looks a very sort of homecraft thing. I make Raggedy Ann dolls for grandchildren, and she sits and spins, and the television set isn't working very well. It seems to go all full of snow and rolling pictures and things. I think it's wearing out. But really, television, you can do without television, I find. It's not really very, very riveting. I'm getting really fond of radio, and I listen an awful lot to that because it seems to have more interesting things. Our television has really become extremely uninteresting at the minute. I look at Radio Times and things from England, and certainly yours seem much, much more interesting programs than we have here. But then we only have a single channel, and I think we have to appeal to the lowest common denominator. I've been doing a little bit of book reviewing too. I was asked by the listener to review Cardi Custard by Noel Card, which I thought, I wasn't terribly impressed. It was beautifully brought out, the book, but they tried to make all the pictures very meaningful and of the period, and they weren't sort of theatrical.